my favorite part of the week, Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And my co-host is Mike Hamnett from the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and also just retired former executive director of RCUH, which stands for the
Research Corporation
of
the University of
Hawaii. And the UH is the part we really care about
Right.
tonight. Okay, and to his left, our special guest, Matt Lynch, who is the Sustainability, UH System Sustainability Coordinator. We're going to examine exactly what that means. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
And Larry Newman, our old friend, coming down because you work with Matt and because with Hawaii Energy, you're always interested in efficiency.
That's right. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so the first thing, Matt, is we got to know how you got here.
How much time do we have? That's a good story. How far back do you want me to go?
Give us a little bio sketch of how you got to be the system coordinator at UH.
All right. Okay. Let's start with the easy questions first then. I have walked a very non-traditional path in my life. I'm fourth generation Filipino on my mom's side. My mom graduated from Aloha. And on my dad's side, he's Aussie, so they met in college. And from 9 till 19, I actually grew up in Australia and moved back. And my big goal at that time was to travel. Though I quickly realized you sort of need money to do that. And I read a book at that time that suggested that, don't get a job for what you can earn, get a job for what you can learn. And so I actually...
I like that.
Yeah.
We got to use that.
Yeah,
Use that going forward.
Young enough and dumb enough to believe it. It worked. It worked really well for me. I was working for Bank of America in their sales division at age 20, and some really good mentors, and was really fixated on learning about this thing called money that we never seemed to have enough of in our household growing up. And so I very quickly started working with a private bank, which are the bank's sort of wealthiest clients, and started to seek to understand the different patterns and behaviors that separated us from them type of thing. And so that was the start of a sort of 10-year career in mortgage banking and real estate finance. I worked, it was my first and last experience with corporate America. We were very unceremoniously dumped by the bank 18 months after getting started there. And so I worked for smaller sort of regional mortgage bank, and then wound up starting my own firm in partnership with asset manager. So we were sort of a one-stop shop where you could come assess and rebalance your real estate portfolio and diversify either into different forms of real estate.
Mortgage banking.
Yeah. Well, we call ourselves real estate advisory planners, very,
But under the hood.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was.
It's a great day. You wake up in the morning one day and say, I think I'm going to start a mortgage banking firm today. Investment banking.
Mortgage
firm.
planning, that's called.
Mortgage planning.
Yeah. I hired a guy when, for a while there, I was being sort of flown around the state and teaching, giving a seminar called How to Survive the Mortgage Market Meltdown to real estate professionals. And I thought, I'm the only guy that's, predicting this, so I'm clearly going to be the only guy that's going to survive it. And I was one of the first to go under. I hate it when you're right about that. But we were so small and so specialized that probably about 6 months before Lehman Brothers was on the front pages, maybe 9 months, the credit markets froze up. And so literally on the Monday, we walked into the office and I could not do the things that was our bread and butter on Friday. And we held on for another 6 months until they literally turned the lights out.
For lack of paying the bill.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was, I guess, my real world MBA in some respects. And I had engaged a former investment banker because I realized I need to cash up. That was one of my fundamental tenets: how you can survive the mortgage market meltdown. Liquidity is king. And I was unsuccessful in raising any capital. Nobody wanted to invest in my small little mortgage planning firm. And then I wound up working for him for the better part of 6 months, and got a fascinating glimpse into the types of tools and techniques that are used, but applying it to sort of small and mid-scale businesses. And then I burnt out really, really bad, and by age 29, the sort of story goes that I had made my first million, so to speak, on paper, and then by age 31, I had lost it all. And so at age 31, I moved back home to Australia, broke and penniless with my parents. did some deep soul searching, tried to figure out what was next. And that was when I got really interested in sustainability, and specifically in sustainable food production systems. And Australia was and still is a sort of real hotbed of innovation for not just sustainable agriculture techniques, but they're starting to push the envelope in looking at how can we devise agriculture production systems that actually restore, repair, and regenerate our ecosystems. Yeah, and really interesting work about temperate soils' potential to sequester carbon and so on and so forth. So I sort of stumbled into this, and one of my key mentors had spent the better part of his career working in aid and development contexts all over the world. So I got to finagle my way onto a 7-week sort of practicum internship in Mongolia back in 2010, and the NGO that contracted him said, "Hey, you have a finance background. Do you think we could maybe integrate food security with economic development?" Of course, we can at least try. And so there was a 4-year pilot that they carved out a really small amount of money to try to launch, and it surprised us all in the way that it outperformed. We were working in westernmost Mongolia, Bayan Olgi province, which ironically, after 3 days of driving through the vast expanse of 0 roads and the emptiness that is the Mongolian steppe, you come into this urban enclave of ethnically Kazakh and Mongolian people that are dealing with minus 40 centigrade winters, very, very thin topsoils, and intensifying weather patterns, and really feeling the effects of climate change firsthand and being forced to adapt. And so all we did was we started with a kitchen garden, essentially built on. So the houses there, you probably think of Mongolian yurts, right?
Yeah.
In this part of the world, they look more like a New Mexican pueblo. That's a standard Kazakh.
What do you call that again?
I don't know what the Kazakh word would be for it. Oh, hasha is the household compound.
Okay.
But I guess they're pueblos. They're kind of the box, they're earth and brick, right, that you see in New Mexico. A Kazakh home looks almost exactly the same. And you have enormous thermal mass in those earthen walls. So what we did was we built passive solar greenhouses onto them, and then they were able to increase their ability to provide, growing potatoes and storing it in root cellars dug under the house. So it's so cold there that a group before us had come in and said, here's what you grow potatoes, you store them in a root cellar over the winter, and they had to heat the root cellars because
they freeze the potatoes.
Exactly. And so you'd have, in your hasha, you'd have your house, and then you'd have a separate root cellar, and you'd be burning suddenly twice the amount of fuel. And so one of the big innovations that we realized is dig it under your house, and you've got the same, you don't have to increase your resource consumption. Exactly. And now they're doing wild things like running a pipe outside the house into that passive solar greenhouse. And so apparently, I'd love to get back there because we started with 12 core staff that worked with 600 sort of target beneficiaries that were very carefully screened. Basically, we were looking for sort of community leaders. This is in an area that is about 40,000 roughly population. And the numbers I heard back a couple of years ago, the project wrapped, was that the final impact was over 8,000 sort of families had been reached through this. And so now there's gardens growing everywhere in the hashas, the household compounds, where before they'd just sort of be barren. So that this sort of community development work that with that particular organization has led to other work in Southeast Asia and in the South Pacific. And that's what really interests me, and that's what really sort of lights my fires.
So how did you get from Mongolia to
Yeah, that's a really good question. I often ask myself the same thing. Along these, while I was traveling, I managed to meet my wife, who's a German national. I was just trying to chart our course back to Hawaii and figure out how to make a livelihood here with this newfound skill set and passion that I had. And we did.
You could build those houses, but Kazakh houses.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can use Manoa Valley.
You use some of the Manoa Valley? A bit cold, is it?
I was thinking, maybe in Kaka'ako,
Yeah, right,
Never
right.
mind.
I think they call those something
Homeless
else.
shelters.
Yeah, so we moved back here. We tried to get married in Germany, and we're ushered out of the country because Germans love their paperwork. I'm not good with paperwork.
Wow,
So
wow.
we weren't able to complete it to the satisfaction, and we moved back 6 months prematurely. Wound up living in my wife's. She had a little VW bus fund that she'd always wanted, and we actually lived in the VW bus for the first 6 months here to get up on her feet. And the first sort of community-based project that I was involved with here was a little reciprocal volunteer network that we started called Permaculture Hawaii, and it's essentially a reverse Ponzi scheme for building gardens. So we'll show up with a pack of rabid volunteers on one day out of the month, and we'll transform any given landscape into a foodscape, from urban backyards to portions of school campuses. And so this got really popular here. You come out to 3, and then you qualify for the network to come and blitz a place of your choosing. And it's a cashless sort of exchange, right? We're building the trading.
All volunteer.
Exactly, and we're trading in the currency of sort of social capital, right, and experiential capital,
Yeah.
and we're reconnecting people, and that has taken off. It's still going. We now have a partnership with Surfrider Foundation, and they provide a small stipend for a coordinator to actually manage all the logistics. At some point, I would love to actually track some of the impact in terms of gardens installed and pounds of produce that have been grown from that. But oddly enough, so the sort of design thinking framework that underpins that, the PERMA and PERMA Blitz, comes from permaculture design, which essentially is a sort of systems thinking approach that models after ecological systems and applies that to how do we solve our sort of human systems, right? And how do we go from a industrialized agriculture system to a more permanent agriculture system that is harmonious with ecosystems. And I'm fascinated by people, so a lot of my work is taking that and trying to apply it to human systems. And so the first, or not the first, but the, at that time, this was about 2012, Ma'o Farms and UH West Oahu were working on getting their Sustainable Community Food Systems Bachelor of Applied Science program going. There's talk about a 10-acre organic farm and whatnot. And so they did a national headhunt, and they found Aurora Winslade, who was their sustainability director, who started as a sort of student activist in the UC system and was instrumental in building out their sustainability office. And so I fondly think of her as a sort of, principal architect for the current system-wide sustainability strategy. It's a collaborative approach. There's been many smart people, way smarter than me, that have contributed to this. But she, as far as we've been concerned in terms of wrestling with this question of how to integrate sustainability values into the operational aspects of a large institution, in some respects, she comes from the future because she's been through that path with an organization and been a part of that transformation. And so she has, bits and pieces of the map that we can adapt and apply here. And so she, funny enough, sat into one of my workshops on permaculture design and said, I've never heard it applied to human systems. Maybe you could help me with the strategic planning meeting that we're doing in a few months. And that was the beginning of my relationship with UH. And I love playing the role of every 3 months seeing this core team of really passionate people and being that catalyst for them, and playing the role of sort of strategic planner with them, but also a facilitator to help guide them through a group process to get to these outcomes. So I learned an awful lot with that. And then Aurora got an offer from Hawaii Energy. And before she stepped out to take on that role as transformation manager, at Hawaii Energy, she cornered me with the other fine woman that was helping her, Daita Sergey, who's a very meticulous biologist, researcher, and has now moved on also, now works for ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, based out of DC.
Here or on the mainland?
Yeah.
Here or on the mainland?
Mainland.
Yeah.
So they're a national organization. Yeah. And so these two very compelling, talented, and convincing women convinced me to step on the inside and to help steward this through.
And when was that?
So my official appointment began July of last year. We started to have that conversation about spring of last year.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to find out exactly what you do all day.
Looking forward to that.
Scary, eh?
Aloha, my name is Justina Spiritu, and I'm the co-host of Hawaii Farmers Series. This is my co-host, Matthew Johnson, and you can catch us every Thursday at 4 p.m. at ThinkTechHawaii.com. What do we talk about, Matt?
So on Hawaii Farmers Series, we're going to be bringing on the farmers and also supporter of farmers, including restaurants, caterers, as well as government supporters and nonprofits to hear their background stories and understanding our local ag community just a little bit better.
Yeah, essentially, there's a lot more that goes into farming and the local food community beyond just producing the food. And we want to feature and get the background story on all these folks and see how we all work together as a community. So join us every Thursday. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're back in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, with Larry Newman, Matt Lynch, Mike Hamlin, and me, Jay Fidel, talking about sustainability and energy at UH. Yes, UH has energy, uses energy too. Okay, but the first question, Larry, is how much of what Matt said do you agree with?
Well, honestly, I've learned a lot about Matt in this first session, quite a bit. But yeah, he's very much on point. I've been involved with the Hawaii Energy Program for about 5 years now, and the role that sustainability, the topic, has grown significantly in momentum. And for us, the energy component of that has really started to blossom quite a bit. So when it first started out, before that first sustainability conference, it was, okay, how can we play a part in this, and how much of it is really aligned with Hawaii Energy's mission for energy efficiency and conservation? And but that movement, if you will, was very accommodating to get energy on the table.
What's the connection? I mean, I heard Matt talk about sustainability as far as food was concerned. Okay, how do you connect food and energy? What Expliquez-vous.
Well, this guy's the expert.
But,
good
awkward segue.
Energy comes through everything. So
We'll see how much
take it
what
away.
you say he agrees with.
Well, Larry's right on point. My interest in sort of food and sustainability is really stems from my personal passion. What the common denominator to me are the people systems that drive it, right? And so I think that's part of what that focus on getting the people systems right is almost a universal challenge, because whether we're talking about energy, food, waste, water, many of the technical solutions to solve the challenges that we face exist. Not all, but a good portion of them do, right? So what prevents those technical solutions from being implemented to solve these challenges?
Systems.
Exactly. It's the social friction of our institutions that get in the way. So I really think of myself as a sort of social architect, and that applies directly to my work overseas, it applies directly to the work at the university.
What's a social architect?
What is a social architect? Someone who is focused on people systems, right? And on identifying why there is that social friction, so that we can redesign those people systems, identify the leverage points, the barriers, the incentives that are required, so that we can streamline idea flow through the organization.
So, okay, we're talking about sustainability in a general sense, and it's a sort of overview of food and energy, a way of thinking, a way of dealing with the planet, and also with the social connections of the society. And so your mission at UH is to find, I'm guessing here, find projects where the UH is not sustainable, and then offer solutions to make it more sustainable in any kind of sustainability.
Sure.
Food, energy, you name it. I guess the question is, what areas have you found at UH in the past year or so where you feel that it is not efficient, not sustainable, and what projects have you set up to correct those problems?
It's a very detailed and complex question you've asked. I'm going to break it down.
It's a compound, complex question.
Yeah, appreciate
But
that,
we'll
Jay.
remind you of it if you go off. On that.
Okay, great. So before I jump into that, we should probably sort of just, the simple definition of sustainability is our ability to provide for our needs.
I promised myself I was not going to ask you that, but since you asked
Since I
yourself
volunteered
that, all
it.
too happy.
So quite simply, our ability to provide for our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to be able to do the same. Okay, now what that can apply on a personal level, on a household level, what does that look like on an institutional level, right? So the questions that we're working with regarding sustainability at the University of Hawaii, the big question, right? Our mission is to support the students, support our community, supporting our students. So the big question is, how are we creating graduates of our institution that are global citizens who are informed, engaged, and equipped with the necessary tools and skill sets to be able to create livelihoods, to be able to create sustainable livelihoods for themselves, and also contribute to help solve the challenges that we face. Right?
Holy moly. And I suppose you have a staff of 200 who are going to help you do that. This is no small
Hopefully
task.
one day soon. I don't know, Mike, maybe you can help me out there. we are, all kidding aside, this is very much a sort of startup organization within the institution. Not to say that sustainability is only recently on the radar. The University of Hawaii has really led the way in terms of research. Much of the we've made significant contributions to environmental sciences and natural sciences, and to climate science.
But you're not
right?
talking about that now. You're talking
Yes,
about preserving the planet for future generations.
Well, incorporate that. This is all wrapped up in there.
Okay.
Right.
But hopefully the science is contributing to that.
Yes. Yes.
But
And
that's not part of the coordinator's effort. That will happen.
research is not my direct purview. Right. I just want to acknowledge all of the good work that has gone before. Right. And over the last couple of decades, as we as a society have been, become more aware of the pressing need to respond, we've seen many different sustainability initiatives come and go over the years at the campuses. They sort of wax and wane with the rise and fall of various sustainability champions, be they students, faculty, staff, administrators. And so why this, rising and falling, right? There's been a lack of sort of systemic integration, right? So what we found in that first strategic planning meeting in 2012 is that the university as an institution has never actually formally articulated a stance on sustainability. Is it important to us? So we presented a draft executive sustainability policy to over 150 people from all 10 campuses and said, listen, what's good about this document? It's just a draft. What works, what doesn't, what's in here that shouldn't be, what's not in here that should be. Got over 40, 50 pages of feedback. Literally hundreds of people have touched this document and formed this. And that executive sustainability policy, that draft that was presented in 2013, was formalized in the February of this year at the annual
Give
Sustainability
us
Summit.
kind of a gestalt about what it says. I mean, I can figure the first part of it would be, yes, we like sustainability. That's the first part.
First
After
is
that,
sustainability is important to us,
Okay,
right? It's
all right.
important to us in how we teach. Well, there's 5 key areas. How do we integrate sustainability into the operations of our campus, how we run our facilities, into our curriculum, how we teach, into the research and scholarship, into community engagement. And the last one is really interesting because I'm still not quite sure how to define this or approach this, but it was very clear from the university community that this needed to be a part of our sustainability. And the way that it's phrased is cultural connections. Recognizing that we are an island culture and that there are ancestral technologies and wisdoms that we draw from, right? That have many of the answers to the climate change related challenges that we face. So if those are the sort of 5 overarching areas, under operations you have energy, waste, water, grounds, landscaping, so on and so forth. We see energy, and we know from what has worked at other institutions of higher ed that have been able to transform the way that they not only run their campuses, also in the way that they integrate these issues, sustainability issues, into and across curriculum and research, right? We see energy efficiency, or energy in general, and our ability to harness energy savings from energy efficiency conservation measures as being the economic driver for this. Because I can make a very strong business case for treating energy efficiency as an investment that I will get a very good return on. If I invest in changing out these lights, I very often will have a very quick payback period. And if I can track, harness, and reinvest those savings, then I've got a viable funding strategy for the long term. Harvard, for example, they started their Office of Sustainability. A colleague and fast becoming good friend of mine, Leith Sharp, was their founding director. One full-time paid position, had a very similar approach, recognized early on.
It's your way of saying there's no 200-member staff?
Yeah, you're sharp, Jay. It's
I
hard to get
picked
anything.
that up right
Yeah,
away.
yeah. You know, Harvard now, a decade and a half into their sustainability initiatives, have 30 to 40 full-time paid staff
Really?
that are essentially, from what Leith tells me, pay for themselves, right?
Through captured savings.
And additional knock-on. So at the start, captured savings,
Yeah.
and then once you realize, wow, there's something to us, and once you move from becoming that fringe sustainability guys, right, resource police guys, to really recognizing it for what it is, which is because sustainability can touch all aspects, right? It has enormous potential to transform the entire sort of social fabric of that organization, right?
And part of what's driving this is the horrendous electricity bills
Yeah,
that UH has
absolutely.
been, I mean,
It
from
was
the,
huge. It was millions a month, right? It was millions.
how,
It is
remember how
millions
much?
a month.
So for Manoa campus represents 80% of the energy use of our entire system, and it's close to the equivalent. I read a report, it's dated, but the report said it's almost 1% of the energy use of the state. Now that being said, Manoa, against the backdrop of sort of churning leadership over the
Right.
last decade and a half, their planning and facility staff have done a great job at realizing energy savings with what they have. So despite the fact of increasing gross square footage, overall energy use has gone down. Our bill has still gone up. We don't really have much control over energy prices.
Larry, have you been involved in that? I mean, is Hawaii Energy
Yeah.
in the campus now?
Hawaii
Have you had
Energy has done a lot of
projects?
work with the campuses, primarily driven by the facilities folks, doing the right thing, upgrading equipment, retrofitting over the past couple of years.
Mhm.
So for sure, there's been some benchmarking work done, taking a look and digging into the energy bills. There are areas of opportunities, but there are also a lot of areas where some of these facilities, especially the new ones, are quite good, very, very efficient.
They've been great. Hawaii Energy's been really great. They've been a core partner from the first annual Sustainability Summit in 2013. They provide technical advice and analysis, and they've been really fantastic strategic partners at helping us think through how do you catalyze, or how do we get to strategic energy management at a large institution? Because the larger your institution is, the bigger your ship, the more difficult it is to turn that ship around, point into the right direction.
And more costly. And that's why we're going to take a short break now. And when we come back, we're going to ask you about the money.
Great.
How much has been saved and how much has been spent to save it? Right, Mike?
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
I'll remember the first discussion about this in 2004, actually.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, we're back. We're live. Mike Hamden to my left, Matt Lynch in the middle, and Larry Newman at the far end, talking about the energy sustainability and sustainability at UH. Matt is the
System Sustainability
Sustainability Coordinator for University of Hawaii, which has a budget of 1.4, I want to say, something in there.
A very large budget.
Very large budget, VLB. So, you know, theoretically, you could touch a lot of parts of that budget by making the university more sustainable. Have you been able to do that? And what areas are you working in to actually have an effect on that budget?
Yeah. So again, our focus, immediate focus is on sort of energy and energy efficiency and on establishing mechanisms to not just track, but to harness and reinvest. Interestingly enough, one of the programs Hawaii Energy offers are rebate incentives, right? And so if our guys implement a project, they, upon verification of the savings that are realized, they'll kick back a financial incentive, right, through the form of a rebate. Now, currently, the current situation is that rebate essentially sort of is absorbed into the general operating system of the budget. And so what if we were able to actually harness that and
Reinvest it.
exactly, right? And so simple in concept, but because we are a state institution, we have all of these guidelines and regulations that we need to abide by. Much of this year has been spent figuring out how to do that. We're close to getting that and hoping to be able to announce some things early next year.
Things like, if you could discuss it without having to kill us.
Well, you know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Green Revolving Loan Fund. Many universities have adopted this model, which essentially is a sort of direct source of low-cost capital that treats energy efficiency upgrades as investments.
Right.
And so it's a sort of internally managed fund. And this gives a lot more flexibility and is essentially a tool to allow us to accelerate implementation of some of the lower hanging fruit. The idea being that what we're doing is we're piloting the processes, right? So that we can build a project management pipeline to go to scale and establish proof of concept and put in the necessary tracking mechanisms, right? And also workflow procedures and accounting infrastructure so that we have all these pieces in place, roll it out over the next year with our sort of seed funding.
Right.
And then once we've established proof of capital, there's no shortage of projects. So the next phase would be a larger chunk of those projects. But you kind of realize that Manoa campus is, it's like, it was described to me as trying to solve a Gordian knot, right? And if you think about like your sort of...
Some people have used other terms, but hey.
Yeah, well, many other terms, I'm sure. It's like it's like your mother-in-law sort of unit renovation sort of gone over, 3 generations and 200 plus buildings and 600 million square foot later with no master plan ever having been
Right,
put into place.
exactly.
So there's been a great article Sylph Beat put out about the work that Steve Meter and his team has done at Planning and Facilities to essentially like figure out where are all these wires and can we get to trunk lines and all the underground infrastructure in place. So that doesn't necessarily yield much forward-facing results, but it's necessary for the long term.
So
right?
are you reporting to the president, to the Board of
That's a good
Regents?
question, yeah.
President.
No, I actually
Board-
report directly to the Vice President for Administration. And essentially, her portfolio is the operational aspects of the 10 campuses.
Is the legislature watching this?
I certainly hope
They
so.
do watch the university very
They
closely.
do.
I have witnesses.
They do.
Sure do.
Yeah, and so as you know, we have the net zero energy by 2035 mandate, and I'm busily preparing the first report out to the
They're going to
legislature.
be there a long time, I think.
There's no shortage of work to be done, if that's what
Yeah.
you're alluding to.
But
yeah.
let me give you a hypothetical. So I say to myself, the university is probably using a lot of fossil fuel energy. Okay, so if it was a commercial operation or a homeowner, he would have to be thinking of photovoltaic. And he would take all those roofs, flat spaces over the parking lots, whatever it is, and he would consider putting photovoltaic there. And he would spend money and save money, and he would be, doing what people do. Are you doing that?
we're looking at all available options. So energy is enormously complex, you know, and if it were as simple as let's find out how much energy we use and then let's now go and right size a system for that, great, problem solved, everybody's happy, but it's not that simple. So for example, there's not enough roof space at Manoa to generate via PV sufficient energy to make that campus itself go net zero.
Right.
So we may have other locations that may have that potential, but now we have issues of how are we going to transmit it and how are we going to do it in a way that's equitable, not only to enhance our ability to execute our mission and serve our students and our communities, but you know, if we were to defect from the grid, who bears the burden of the fixed costs, right? So how do we do this? We need to be able to, and we're actively working on figuring out solutions with not just our key sort of internal stakeholders, but also our key external stakeholders, hence the close working relationship with Hawaii
Let me
Energy.
reel
and
that
others.
back for a minute. Did you say defect from the grid?
Yeah.
Is this an option?
I said
You're not-
if we were
university-
to, there would be
Is this
significant
an option that you
implications.
might consider? Is this in the report?
I don't know that it'll be in the report, but I'm just looking at the practicality of it. Like, sure, it's an option. Is it the best option? Not sure.
It's not good for the state.
Yeah,
Not
it,
good
it
for Hawaiian
requires
Electric either.
it requires deep thought, you know, and Hawaiian Electric needs to be at the table, right, to
Right.
help figure out and create pathways forward together. Because the only way that we're going to be able to achieve these ambitious goals is working together, you know.
Yeah, but also doing ambitious things. I mean, for example, you know, there've been various sustainability houses.
Yep.
You know, School of Architecture was involved. There's another one too up there, where you know you put a lot of disciplines together, a lot of scientific researchers together, and they come up with some kind of you know project that is very sustainable and teaches us and learns all kinds of new ways to do that.
Energy houses going back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
When I was a student
Yeah,
there.
right. Nothing. You were a student there.
I was.
Manoa actually just broke ground on their first net zero energy classroom. So, you know,
Classroom.
Yeah.
You know, the point is you got a lot of research
Yeah,
talent
absolutely.
there
Yeah.
in various schools, and you could draw them in and have them solve problems. Students also, you know, it's just not only the you know graduate researchers, but the students, and solve problems and save energy and make the University of Hawaii really a wonderful
part of the waxing and
savings
waning of
organization.
that sounds great to me. I'm all in for that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
part of the waxing and waning, and you alluded to this, Matt, and that is the students drove a lot of that early on.
Yeah, actually,
And then they
yeah.
graduated.
Yeah.
And then things sort of stalled. And then somebody new would kind of get religion about sustainability, and all of a sudden it would crop up again.
Yeah, well, you know, so before in 2014, the Board of Regents unanimously agreed to amend their policy to, for the first time, specifically articulate sustainability as a priority for the institution.
Right.
Now, they did that on the sort of heels of very strong coordinated student testimony. There's statewide student coalition, Student Sustainability Coalition of Hawaii, organized and actually flew students over to the Board of Regents meeting in Kauai, where at the end of the meeting, we need to do this, right? And with that, so to put that into context, the last time the Board of Regents made such this type of an amendment was to articulate Native Hawaiian studies as a priority for the institution. And if you go, how long ago was that? A decade and a half?
Longer than that.
Something like that, 2
20
decades.
years.
Yeah, okay. And so, you know, 20 years from that simple statement, and look at what they've been able to accomplish. So think about what the significance is for what we, you know, from little things, big things grow,
Right.
right?
We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to get to that, the significance to the community in general. So, I mean, it's easy to say that, as we discussed before the show, is that if you're saving money at the university because you're being efficient or you're using, you know, cheaper ways to build energy, you're saving the state some money. That's my money. Because a lot of it comes through the legislature. I mean, tuition is a small fraction of
It's
who
a
pays
bigger
that
fraction
budget.
than it used to be, a lot bigger than it used
Yeah,
to be.
yeah. So you know, we want to see you save money up there for our own personal interest as taxpayers. But you know, the other thing is maybe you could teach us things that you are learning in sustainability. So, and what I see is, you know, ultimately we should care because out of the university, sort of like in the sugar days, we learned a lot about agriculture from sitar. That's where it came from. I mean, brilliant, discoveries all the time, amazing things, including GMOs, by the way. Did I say that? Sorry. But, we learned a lot from the university, and we can learn a lot from the university. So we as citizens outside the university should care about that a lot. And finally, and this is a point inherent in what you've been talking about, is that you are generating graduates who are, sensitive to the point, and therefore the future of the state. And I mean, are these things being realized? Is this stuff in the plan? As a citizen, should I feel that this is working for me? I need to feel that.
Yeah. As a citizen, I'd be really excited about the prospects and the potential, because it feels like the pieces are in place, and I think the next 10 years of the university will look a lot different from the last 10 years. I'm very often introduced as the sustainability guy, and then it's, I recycle. Sustainability is not about the resource police. That is not an aspirational thing to inspire people to be involved with. Sustainability is about innovation and responding innovatively to the challenges of our times. We're talking about preparing our graduates, to be able to engage, in this type of problem solving for the challenge of our times, and preparing them to create livelihoods and to have jobs that probably don't even exist, right? So it's an entirely new paradigm, and it does require innovation, and it requires us to get out of our own way so that we can really, achieve our full potential of really creating that global citizen that graduates from our organization.
One thing is a metric that appeals to me, and that is that you create graduates who are into food production sustainability, and they go out like that show we had on during the break, Farming Hawaii Farm, where there are young people out of UH or elsewhere who actually go out and farm. They find a way to farm.
Go Farm program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they feed us.
Yeah.
And so we are not, we are not dependent on lima beans from Peru.
Sure.
Chile, that's where the lima beans come
Bananas
from.
from Ecuador. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Is that happening? Because, it's not going to be meaningful to a guy like me anyway,
Understood.
unless it happens in some volume, in, some
Yeah.
considerable volume.
and it has to start with us walking the walk. We cannot teach what we do not practice. Hence the Office of Sustainability right now, its primary focus is on integrating sustainability into the operations and planning of our university so that we can be better stewards of the resources that we use, right? And from that, the type of innovation that's required to solve those problems will trickle out. And then when you're walking the campus, the cognitive disconnects that happen now when you look and realize the T12 lighting that's still in place, as that starts to shift, as it is going to be over the coming years, that reinforces, without having to say a word, without having to introduce a course, but we are now
People
creating.
can see it.
Exactly.
A
And
lot of
social
work.
learning is the most influential piece of how we learn as adults. So.
Well, we're about out of time, Mike, and that means it's your turn to summarize what we've learned here today, and to comment on exactly how you respond to all
Well, I
this.
remember going back to 2004 when after Hawaiian Electric had done an audit of UH Manoa, and the vice president for administration and the vice president of Hawaiian Electric were telling me that the audit had been done but nothing had happened. And now, some years later, 11 years later, something's happening. And it just, if you stay around long enough, you can really see change. And it's a real pleasure to see it.
Thanks for that, Mike. You just gave
Yeah,
me goosebumps.
so what we need now is for you to stay around.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for your support, Larry.
Sure.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, good
Yeah, good
alliance,
job,
good
Larry.
connection. Okay, that's valuable discussion. Larry Newman, way over on the left. Matt Lynch, the UH Systems Sustainability Coordinator, and I really mean that. And
Took
Mike
an hour,
Hamlin,
but-
former Executive Director of RCUH, who cares a lot about research, among
I do.
other things, and energy.
And energy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Great discussion.
Thank you.
Aloha.